Mesdames et messieurs.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome, dear shareholders, dear friends. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to another AXA Combined General Meeting. I hope you managed to get here without too many difficulties. I know that the Vigipirate Renforcé anti-terrorist plan here in France doesn't make it easier to get around, but these measures are indeed in everybody's best interest. I'm accompanied here today by Thomas Buberl, who is our Chief Executive Officer of the group, and Frédéric de Courtois, who is our Group Executive Vice President. I would also like to thank yourselves for your presence and the members of the board who are here in the front row with us today. Thank you for your commitment and your active contribution to the work of the board. Ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, I'd like, as I said, to thank yourselves too for being so loyal to us. Thank you for coming here today. In a big group like ours, we could not develop if we hadn't got the help and support of our shareholders, especially our personal shareholders, our individual shareholders. You are all stakeholders in our company. And the annual general meeting is our annual meeting together where your board presents its proceedings to you, the work it's been doing over the last year. It is accountable to you. The senior managers of the group executives come and expound on the strategy and development prospects of your group. And this annual meeting is also an opportunity for the senior managers of the group and your board to answer all of the questions that you would like to bring up with us. So I would like to inform you also that there are non-shareholders present in the room with us today, so our annual general meeting has the character of a public meeting here today. Also, I'd like to point out that it will be broadcast, live and recorded on our website, axa.com. We shall now proceed with the formalities prior to opening the meeting and appoint the committee of the AGM. This annual general meeting is being held today on the first call, the first invitation to the meeting. It was convened in accordance with the legal provisions by a notice of meeting published on February the 23rd, 2024 in the Bulletin des Annonces Légales Obligatoires and by a notice of meeting published in the same bulletin on March the 20th, 2024, as well as in the French legal gazette called Les Affiches Parisiennes on the same date. I've just been informed that the meeting is duly convened in both its ordinary and extraordinary form. Now, the quorum, the provisional quorum, is 71.3%. 71.3%. I'll inform you of the definitive quorum before the resolutions are put to the vote, once all the shares of shareholders present or represented will have been counted. So I hereby declare this combined general meeting open and shall proceed to appoint the committee. I shall myself chair this meeting in my capacity as chairman of the board of directors. I shall call as scrutineers the two shareholders present who hold in their own right or as proxies the greatest number of votes. They are AXA Assurance IARD Mutuelle, represented by Mr. Philippe Guéron, director of this company, duly authorized, and AXA Assurance Vie Mutuelle Company, represented by Mr. Olivier Richet, director of this company, duly empowered. I'd like to thank you both for agreeing to be scrutineers, and I suggest that we appoint as secretary of this meeting Mr. Frédéric de Courtois. So the officers of the meeting are now in place. I'd like to inform the meeting also of the presence of Maître Miellet, who is a court commissioner or commissaire de justice, appointed at the request of the company, who will be responsible for making sure that the meeting abides by legal rules. Now, the statutory auditors who've been convened in accordance with the law by a registered letter are present too. They are Ms. Bénédicte Vignon, representing PricewaterhouseCoopers Audit, and Mr. Olivier Durand, representing Ernst & Young Audit. Also, I'd like to point out that Mr. Antoine Esquieu, representing KPMG SA, whose appointment as statutory auditors is proposed to this meeting, Mr. Eskew is also with us. Lastly, I'd like to point out that I've made all the legal documents available to the meeting, and I would add that those shareholders who so requested have received the documents and information required by law or have been able to inspect these at the company's head office or on the company's website within the time frame required by the regulations. We're convening this combined annual and extraordinary general meeting here today to ask you to vote on 27 ordinary resolutions, including 5 resolutions which have not been approved by the Board of Directors and 3 extraordinary resolutions. I propose that we dispense with the verbatim reading of the agenda for this meeting. You may consult the simplified agenda, which is appearing on the screen behind me just now. I also propose that we dispense with the reading of the Board of Directors' reports, which have been made available to you under the conditions provided for by law. This will give us more time for the presentations and, above all, to answer your questions. I'd also like to point out that, as at previous meetings, we will be using electronic voting, and the details of this will be explained to you before we actually take the vote on the resolutions. Now, before Thomas Buberl presents AXA's strategic outlook, I would like to underline the group's excellent performance during its most recent strategic plan. AXA is faring very well, very, very well. Actually, 2023 was the last year of the previous strategic plan, and we achieved all of our objectives or even exceeded them. The financial performance was remarkable, and the group now has equity, which makes it particularly robust. That enabled us to set up a dividend payout policy that's even more attractive. My second remark is that this soundness is good news also because the world we're living in is a world which comprises more and more risk: climate risk, cyber risk, the violent return of geopolitical risks, and economic and financial turbulence. These all require us to adapt to changing circumstances. And my third and last remark is that for AXA, this risk-laden environment creates new obligations, but also heralds in opportunities, obligations to our clients, our people, our employees, society in general, to help everybody to confront these increased risks. Thomas Buberl will detail out in particular our strategy regarding inclusive insurance, and will also speak later on about this and show you a film showing you our commitments to all of those who are relying on us. So this world laden with risk is also an opportunity, the opportunity to speed up our development thanks to our sound starting points. That's the ambition of our new strategic plan. And I'll give the floor straight away now to Thomas Buberl, who will present our strategy to you. Thomas Buberl.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you again at this new general meeting. First of all, I will present the strategic outlook for AXA. This will also be an opportunity to go over the year's highlights and present the mainstays of our new strategic plan, Unlock the Future, which was disclosed in February this year. 2023 marks the completion of an intense phase of transformation for AXA in a context of rising risks. In this challenging environment, AXA was able to stick to a high performance. We continue to commit ourselves strongly towards our policyholders and a commitment which we make with all the more confidence that we have reached or even topped all the goals of our previous strategic plan, named Driving Progress 2023. On such solid foundations, we are initiating in 2024 a new strategic acceleration phase as part of sustainable and profitable growth. AXA has completed in 2023 excellent results, which prove the successful transformation of the group as I kicked it in with my team since 2016. First of all, our premiums are up by 3% to 103 billion euros, which illustrates the very good momentum of our main business lines. Such growth turned out to be profitable, as shown by our underlying earnings, which are up by 6% at 7.6 billion euros. Besides, our underlying earnings per share are increasing this year by 8%, topping the target range of our Driving Progress Plan 2023. The robustness of our balance sheet has been borne out by a solvency ratio up by 12 points at 227%. On account of such very good results, the board of AXA proposes to shareholders a dividend of €1.98 per share, which is up by 16%. And the board has also approved a buyback for a maximum amount of 1.6 billion euros, whose specifics were presented last February. Such yearly results show once again our ability to deliver solid performance in line with our goals. I am very proud of this work carried out by our teams. I will now go over the specifics on the balance sheet of our strategic plan called Driving Progress 2023. As I mentioned, the goals of our 2023 Driving Progress plan were widely reached or even exceeded. Our underlying earnings per share are up by 9%. That is 2 points more than the upper range of our target. Our accumulated cash remittance amounts to 16.4 billion euros, which represents 2 billion euros more relative to the initially provided for amount. Our solvency ratio stands at 227% in 2023, which again is far beyond our target goal. Lastly, the return of equity as well is in the upper range of our target. Such results show the very good collective commitment which has enabled us to transform AXA very deeply since 2016. I note as well that our employees' commitment rate, as we measure it every 6 months through an internal barometer, keeps increasing and has kept increasing throughout the last 3 years. Such transformation is the basis of the AXA of tomorrow. We have simplified our organization. We have refocused our geographic footprint. We have shrunk our exposure to market risks and fully succeeded the integration of AXA XL. This very good performance, we are redistributing it to all our stakeholders, ever since we've been doing, since the creation of it nearly 40 years ago, AXA is keen on sharing fairly the value which was created by such businesses for our employees, who are the pillars of the success of our 2023 driving progress. This is 8.6 billion euros of premiums and wages that are paid in 2023. AXA is today the first insurer who has obtained in 2023 the certification proving that all our employees are receiving a remuneration which exceeds the vital local wage amount, which represents the level of remuneration which is adequate enough to fulfill a family's main needs as defined by the global covenant of the United Nations. And today, the remuneration of our employees represents on average 4.4 times the level of the local vital wages. Of course, we have to care for our customers. We have paid them over 50 billion euros in terms of compensation. Likewise, we invested over more than 30 billion euros in the real economy. Besides, we paid nearly 11.7 billion euros in taxes and social contributions in 2023, out of which nearly 40% in France. Lastly, our stockholders, to whom we have paid out nearly 3.8 billion euros through dividends for their support to our corporate strategy. AXA today, what is it? It's a company which is committed towards its employees, towards society at large, and towards human progress. Protecting is what matters and will always be at the heart of our mission. This remains vital within our new strategic plan. As AXA's loyal shareholders, you are able to note the deep transformation that we have kicked in to adapt the group to its environment. With a nearly steady revenue level, and even if the values that are ours and the culture that drives us have remained unchanged, AXA no longer is the same company that it was in 2016. I would like more specifically insist on our new business model, which from now on is perfectly balanced between the commercial and the personal lines business, which gives us both a good size and a unique positioning compared to our competitors. Practically speaking, what does this entail? We are the largest global insurer for commercial risks. In this respect, we support every company in the face of the increasing risks such as NatCats, cyber, and others. We are also leaders in regard to collective protection. Supporting companies is obviously about supporting also their people, their employees, when it comes to health, well-being, and protection. Lastly, we are leaders in Europe when it comes to personal line insurance, stressing P&C as well as life and health. In a cross-cutting way, asset management constitutes as well an essential mainstay of this balanced business model. If we now look at the current environment as well as the long-term trends, AXA today is well positioned to build its future. Our diversified business mix, combined with our solidity, are precious trump cards to face an economic environment which is highly volatile. Thanks to our multi-risk technical expertise and thanks to our international reach, we are also extremely well positioned to fulfill the needs when it comes to protection, which are growing, especially around health and pensions. We have available also capacity to reinforce our services to adapt, prevent, and provide advice to fight against the knock-on effects of the climate change. It is on these foundations, which are extremely solid, that we launched the next chapter of the history of the group called Unlock the Future, which will take us all the way into 2026. Unlock the Future is an ambitious plan which aims at rolling out the capacities and the energies of our group in terms of human and financial terms to meet the growing expectations of our clients. It is also a plan which is focusing on innovation and excellence, whether it is technical or operational, to serve our customers' protection, which remains the heart of our insurance business and as an asset manager. Through such a plan, we wish to do three things. First of all, speed up the organic growth of our business. Secondly, prop up our excellence technically and operationally. And thirdly, further assert our commitment within society at large. These three pillars will be supported by a human resource strategy at the service of commitment and of the development of our employees, and obviously through a very strong financial discipline, which remains a token of essential solidity in the current context, which is quite special. So speeding up growth requires, obviously, the deployment of our businesses that are the most dynamic. It's about conquering also new clients in our strategic markets and, of course, shoring up our distribution networks. Frédéric de Courtois will come back with further details on this. So, shoring up the operational and technical excellence. It's, for example, the use of data to improve our pricing processes and how we manage claims. It's also about banking on AI to shore up the automation of processes and accelerating productivity gains. The reassertion of AXA's role in society at large as a responsible player constitutes the third pillar of our new strategy, and I will come back with greater details on it a little bit later. In order to confirm our commitment to succeed with this new strategic stage, we are setting ourselves ambitious financial objectives which will help us to underpin the successes obtained when we implemented our previous driving plan, Driving Progress 2023, with the same requirement about financial discipline, which is typical at AXA. So, first of all, it's about an annual growth of our underlying earnings per share ranging between +6 and +8%. Secondly, an equity profitability goal between 14 and 16%. And thirdly, a cash remittance exceeding 21 billion euros by 2026. These ambitious financial goals should allow us to invest in the company, especially in technical expertise, but likewise in the development of our distribution networks, as well in new technologies, especially AI. Over 2.5 billion euros will be invested to fuel growth over the period of the next plan. Together with these ambitious goals, we are offering as well an attractive capital management policy for our shareholders. Our great discipline and the operational performance of our business allow us to propose a dividend that is up and launch a new buyback program. Frédéric de Courtois will go over this with greater details on this. Let me come back now to our sustainable development strategy, which constitutes the third pillar of our new plan. As you know, this is a topic which is at the heart of AXA for many years and which we intend to continue to drive with a very strong ambition. First of all, because the challenges of society are our business, the 6 GIEC's report is very clear. Nearly half of the worldwide population lives in a very vulnerable environment to climate change. And the last edition of our so-called Future Risks report has highlighted the several crises in which we live today already. And on several markets, the issue of being able to obtain insurance, including in France, is raised by customers, public opinion, and also by the governments. To make sure that our world can remain assurable, as we must make it more sustainable. And as an insurance company, our role is to help society at large to adjust to such changes and reinforce its social and physical resilience. We owe it to our stakeholders. In other words, for our 94 million customers, we are a partner of trust. And it is for us a priority to continue to face the new needs and challenges in terms of protection, such as adapting to weather changes, or also by looking at inclusion. For us, for our 147,000 employees and agents, we want to make sure that they find in their work a means to contribute positively to the major changes and challenges of our society. And I'd like now to hail more particularly their commitment as volunteers within our program called AXA à tout cœur. Nearly 37,000 employees have participated in nearly 80,000 volunteer-based actions in 2023. Lastly, as a leader and the leader in our industry, we owe it to be proactive in seeking solutions through our investments through projects that we bring forward, but also within our own operations to act in a responsible way and lead by example. For all those reasons, AXA's ambition ought to be to act in order to contribute to a more sustainable future. In our next plan, our action will be focusing more particularly on two topics. First of all, developing inclusive insurance, and secondly, speeding up our efforts to provide support to climate transition. I will start with climate transition. We have held very strong and ambitious commitments in favor of the climate. First of all, through our investments, we have shrunk the intensity, the carbon intensity of the assets of our portfolio by 48%, and that is between 2019 and 2023, well beyond our goal. At the same time, we have topped our green investment objective. Adding up everything comes to 30 billion euros between 2019 and 2023. Such investments have a practical impact on society at large, such as putting in place the largest offshore global wind park off the UK. We have also acted as an insurer. Last summer, we announced unheard goals related to the decarbonation of some of our P&C insurance portfolios, and this thanks to the collective intelligence and the common work of several of our peers, which resulted in an innovative methodology for calculating emissions related to insurance activities. Lastly, we have acted as a responsible company. We have, for instance, diminished the carbon footprint of our own operations by 34% between 2019 and 2023. Thanks to their exceptional commitment, our staff has supported this transformation itinerary of AXA. 96% of our teams were trained to take into account the challenges of climate changes thanks to our so-called AXA Climate Academy. Additionally, we have opened up this training to all our individual shareholders, and I encourage you all to take advantage of this very interesting training course. By 2026, we want to increase our commitment in favor of climate transition. First of all, by taking forward further the understanding of the landscape of risks, and especially those risks related to climate change. We will continue our philanthropic support in research on the climate thanks to the AXA pour la Recherche Fund, which since it was launched in 2008 has financed over 700 projects in 39 countries for a total amount of 256 million euros. In 2023, 3 million euros were earmarked for research projects on the climate or biodiversity. Thanks to this AXA Climate, we will also expand the training offer as regards climate and biodiversity, which have been already attended by over 6 million employees of client companies. And we will continue to support the ramp up of the skills of our own people by highlighting by 2026 the adaptation to climate change. So expanding our role as regards climate transition, it's also about putting our investments and our underwriting capacities at the service of this major transformation of our economy and of our uses. Each year, 5 billion euros, in other words, a major share of our investments in the economy will be dedicated to such transition. Frédéric de Courtois will go over on this point again during his presentation. Likewise, we want to better support our customers and our partners in the ecological transition. By 2026, we will be initiating this dialogue with our 200 largest company clients in the world in order to increase their knowledge regarding the climate impact and the transition efforts, as well as on the risks that are related to it. We will advise them about the emission sources, the solutions that they can provide, and the advantages of a reporting in this regard. Our ambition is also to strengthen our support to this transition as an insurance company with a goal of reaching in 2026 6 billion euros in premiums in P&C related to the transition in our main markets. This may involve the insurance of business or goods which are essential for the transition, especially of renewable energies, electric vehicles, or ecological buildings. Lastly, we want to take this a step further when it comes to the impact of our action. This involves, on the one hand, to continue our ambitious policy, which is to mitigate climate change, not only in our investment portfolios and when it comes to underwritings, in order to reach the decarbonation goals that we set ourselves by 2030. This means also that we move we ramp up our ability to help our customers to adapt to the consequences of climate change. You have seen in the last few weeks the first cases with, for example, the so-called Green Guarantee recently launched by AXA France to help our customers better prevent and foresee the consequences of natural catastrophes. So beyond these new products, which we want to develop, we are committing ourselves to provide also to our company customers more than 9,000 solutions and services to adapt to climate, whether this is about training courses or prevention tools, especially through our entity called AXA Climate. Let me now go through the specifics of our strategy in regard to inclusive insurance. AXA, as I said, its calling has always been to be a universal insurance company. We started to build an offer dedicated to so-called inclusive insurance, and this was already in 2017 at the time in emerging countries, and our ambition now is to spread such approach into our European markets. Such program, which we have baptized or called AXA Essential, will be developed throughout the group all along the period of our new strategic plan in order to allow the modest and classes to better face unexpected events and thus reduce their vulnerability. In order to take into account these classes which are in full swing in emerging countries and those who might be unhooked in mature countries such as France, the so-called inclusive insurance is an approach which seeks to propose solutions which should be to fit the specific needs of these vulnerable financial populations. And also these solutions should be affordable because they would be focused on guarantees that they really need. And thirdly, it should be accessible through relevant distribution channels. This will allow us to reach our goal of 20 million customers covered in 2026. In emerging countries, based on this model, which will already be serving nearly 14 million customers in 15 countries, we'll be speeding up our growth through solutions that ever more suitable for our target customers with distribution partnerships that are innovative, especially in Indonesia, with our partner, the Mandiri Bank, and in Mexico. In European markets, our goal is to better protect our modest employees, the very small SMEs, as well as pensioners, especially in rural areas. In the coming month, we'll be launching offers dedicated to the very small companies across all our key markets. In France, we chose a pack which covers every risk that is related to occupational work with cover levels which are suited to the level of businesses, enables us to meet all the needs at a competitive price. We will also reinforce our presence in boroughs or villages with less than 10,000 inhabitants by proposing an offer called My Health for Your Community at very low prices. And lastly, we want to improve the access to additional health protection. Today, AXA France covers already over 1,400 boroughs and villages and 35,000 people through this mechanism. And we think we can expand this very widely, this process in the next few years, especially thanks to the local commitment of our general agents and our employee agents. So therefore, it is a really transformation of our business that we kicked in and which will continue throughout the duration of our plan and well beyond. This, in my view, is absolutely essential so that our purpose and our brand keeps alive this universal calling that it must continue to carry. In conclusion, I'd like to express again my gratitude and my thankfulness to all our 147,000 AXA employees and agents for their commitment, and as well as our clients and shareholders for their trust and their fidelity throughout this transformation. Before I hand it over to Frédéric de Courtois for the presentation of the financial and extra-financial performances, I would like to invite you to watch, and this is the first time our new global advertising campaign, which highlights our strong will to better insure small companies who, as you know, are at the heart of our approach in order to make insurance more inclusive. I thank you for your attention.
I got flowers in the spring. I got you to wear my ring. And when I'm sad, you're a cloud. And if I get scared, you're always around. So let them say your hair's too long, 'cause I don't care, with you I can't go wrong. Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can climb. Babe, I got you, babe.
J'espère que ce petit
I hope that this short film enlightened you on our ambitions going forward. The idea is to enable people who might leave the scope of being able to be insured to acquire insurance nonetheless. So thank you, Thomas, for presenting our strategic plan. And we'll now ask Frédéric de Courtois to kindly come and present AXA's performance for us during 2023. Frédéric de Courtois.
bonjour à
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to talk about the performance of AXA in 2023. That's financial and non-financial. And I'll also touch on the implementation of our plan. Firstly, let's have a look at the performance of our 4 lines of business in 2023. As Thomas said already, overall growth in premium income, 3%, 103 billions worth, and contrasting developments in our different lines of business. Excellent performance in P&C insurance with growth of 7%. That's for commercial lines, growth of 9%, and also in retail lines with growth of 6%. Now, in this growth, we see it's due to inflationary phenomena, but also thanks to portfolio gains. Now, the second major line of business is life and savings, with more modest growth standing at 1% in the year, in a very particular context of high interest rates and therefore ferocious competition by products such as the French livret A, the savings account, and our Euro croissance products in France put in an excellent performance in this context. Then we've seen a development in health that posts degrowth of 7%, but that's a bit deceptive, the figure I mean, because you'll recall that we cancelled 2 major contracts for reinsurance on health internationally that were not profitable. Outside of those major policies, the development in the health revenue is plus 7%, with strong dynamics in individual health and also an employee benefit cover. Regarding asset management, it was a resilient development we saw, minus 2%, in a difficult context with interest rates swinging back up and a drop in terms of bond yields. Then regarding the earnings, Thomas recalled this underlying earnings quite in line with our objectives, 7.6 billion. Now, I'd underscore a couple of items here. The first thing is the claims rate that's very strong for natural catastrophes. similarly to previous years, actually. So we're probably talking about a groundswell trend here. And of course, AXA will continue to cover these natural catastrophes to insure them. Second thing I'd like to point out is that there was an extremely good performance put in by AXA XL with earnings close to €2 billion worth. Now, these earnings, I think, confirm that our strategy in acquiring AXA XL was well-founded, and also we've seen the end of the turnaround of AXA XL. It is now totally completed. Regarding the financial structure and the return on equity of AXA, well, I confirm that the financial structure of AXA is extremely strong in all of its dimensions. That is stockholders' equity, return on equity, and cash in the holding company. This is the outcome of our strong financial discipline, but also of the very good performance, operational performance put in. Of course, I'll come back to this. This excellent financial structure is the thing that enables us to have a good springboard to pursue an active dividend payout ratio that will go in the positive direction the whole time for our shareholders. Now, what about our new strategic plan that we call Unlock the Future? Let's look at the plan. Thomas has outlined our major objectives, our overarching objectives. I won't go into them again, but I'd just like to add a few comments regarding the general background, the general framework. Firstly, the starting point of AXA is excellent. We have an excellent base starting off. And as it's excellent, the new strategic plan is therefore no revolution. It's an evolution, I would say, an ambitious evolution or development. It's a follow-on. And that's why we want to develop the fundamentals of our business lines. And that's what we're talking about in the new strategic plan. Second important point to flag up is that insurance and asset management are lines of business comprising employees, technologies, and data. And in that context, there are a couple of cross-cutting strategic matters that feature in our plan. Firstly, our ambitious strategy regarding human resources, and also in the three objectives you see on the screen here, strong action and an increase in investment in technologies and data. The last item I'd like to flag up to help you to understand this new plan is that in the end of the day, this plan is revolving around the scaling up of our best practices, really, most of the time. In a big group like AXA, it's important when you've done something good in the country, in the line of business, core business, to transfer that, to transpose that elsewhere to other countries, other lines of business too. So the new plan aims at doing that. And it's not that easy, but that's part of our plan. I'd like to briefly comment now on the first two priorities of our plan. Firstly, speed up organic growth. If I review our different lines of business, I'll quote some examples as I go along. So in commercial P&C, that's an important part of our business, we've focused on two main sources of growth. Firstly, the insurance cover of mid-caps, what we call mid-caps. These are companies that are often not sufficiently covered by insurance, and they're more and more international too. So they need international cover that AXA is in a position to provide them with. So that's a fine growth opportunity for us as AXA. Then a second growth opportunity for us is all of the new risks for corporations in general, for all companies, that is cyber, the cyber risk, and also all the risks associated with the energy transition. These are risks that we haven't got much experience in. We haven't got a history of it, so we've got to develop our know-how, strong expertise on that so that we can insure those new risks for our companies. The second major topic is what we call employee benefits. That's protection and health benefits for employees of companies, and then individual health. Now, here there are major opportunities for us, firstly, in covering the employees of companies and especially of SMEs. SMEs, they're insufficiently covered. So employee benefits for SMEs, that's one opportunity. The second opportunity in this area is to better activate, leverage our network of agents and employees. They're already selling healthcare products, but we could go further. And the last item is P&C for personal clients and also life and savings. Now, here there's one major opportunity, which is to grow our proprietary distribution network, agents and direct employees, and also, of course, aim at growing the productivity of the networks of agents. That's the best investment we can make, is to invest in our network, and especially utilizing technologies, especially artificial intelligence, to make productivity gains. The second major priority then in our strategy is to bolster our excellence, especially in our insurance business lines. Technical excellence for a start. Two main priorities here as well. Firstly, to make better use of technology and data and AI, artificial intelligence. Now, that goes very far. I know it covers everything that it has to do with fighting fraud, also the utilization of satellite photos that we can do now to understand better our insurance clients and to understand the risks that corporate and retail clients want us to cover. So to make better use of technology and also engage in more prevention. And there's a new service platform for companies that we call the Digital Commercial Platform, which is now up and running, which will gradually widen its scope, offering our corporate customers the services that they need to better forestall different risks and obtain cover for risks that they may be exposed to. And that platform is already up and running, as I said. So regarding operational excellence, the key topics here are for us the automation of all simple tasks in companies. Now, that is complex to implement, but it is now possible thanks to technology, and in a general way also scale up on everything to do with artificial intelligence. Now, just to quote an example on that, we have 400 pilots that we're running concerning artificial intelligence around the group, and we've pinpointed 17 cases that would be promising for all of the companies in the group. And our objective is to widen the 17 cases to cover all the companies in the AXA group. The last important item on the implementation of the plan, I don't want to talk about the objectives because Thomas talked about that, but I would like to talk about our new capital management policy. Now, this new policy, which is very attractive for our shareholders, of course, it's also very balanced. It comprises two main points. Firstly, a total redistribution ratio of 75% of our earnings, and that redistribution would be divided into 60% in the form of dividends and 15% in the form of share buybacks. That's the first item in our new capital management policy. And the second point is that we commit that the dividend per share each year will be at least equal to what was paid out the previous year. And still on that topic, I'd like to comment on the 75% figure I just mentioned. What does it mean when we say 75%? It means that we'll keep 25% of our earnings in our reserve so as to fund our growth, to fuel our growth. When we published our plan, we said that the indication of growth for the plan would be 5% per annum. Now, in insurance, when you grow, you've got to fund your growth also finance your solvency margin. So we've got to keep in our reserves earnings to fuel the growth. So the 25% that we'll keep in the reserves, that's 25% that we'll need to fuel our growth. Then a technical point is that all of the other investments, apart from the investment in the solvency margin, all the other investments for our employees in technology and so on, these will be financed via the P&L statement. So they'll be, deducted from the earnings that will then be distributed. And these investments for our people, for our employees, and for technologies are posting strong growth in the upcoming plan. A couple of words about the performance of the AXA share price. You'll see it's excellent in absolute value terms, and compared with our peers, this performance is made up of the appreciation of our own stock and also the dividend. Now, I must say, this is the fruit of a good strategy, well implemented, I think, and well understood by investors. It may not be very modest to say that, but it's the truth. And the last chapter is the non-financial performance that I commented on last year already, which is very important for us in AXA, and I want to revert back to that now. As I said last year, we want to progress, but we need to measure if we are to know if we've really progressed a lot or not. So we have the AXA Progress Index, the Index for Progress. We talked about that last year already. The AXA Index for Progress, measuring our impact on society as an investor, AXA as an insurance company, and AXA as a responsible company. Now, what we must understand, first of all, is that we achieved or exceeded all of our objectives for the upcoming plan. I'd like to dwell on the cross-cutting indicator that sounds mysterious, which is the Standard & Poor's Global Corporate Sustainability Assessment that you see on the slide here. This is an indicator computed by the Standard & Poor's company, which has the advantage of comparing us, benchmarking us with our competitors, and that's important for us. The best companies in this index are in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, which is a prestigious index. And I'd like to point out that AXA is in that index and has been there for the last 17 years, continuously. Now, this Standard & Poor's indicator is something that measures our overall performance on everything that's non-financial, and in that respect, it's part and parcel of the compensation package of the top management people within AXA. The last item I wanted to speak about is the role of AXA in society. Our climate problems and the mitigation of climate change remain for us. The addressing of climate problems and the mitigation of climate change remain key priorities for us. And we've revisited our objective for our upcoming plan period. You see the data on the screen. I won't go into the details, but look at the middle part if you don't mind, because that's the newer dimension here. We attach particular attention to the reduction of emissions associated with insurance for our corporate clients, as you see here, 30%, and retail personal customers as well. That's a new feature here. And we've defined that as being one of our objectives too. Also, we're maintaining the AXA Index for Progress for the next plan, and the structure of the index will remain the same with the pillars that don't change. We've modified the content, of course, and the objectives of that. But just to be brief, the objectives for AXA as an investor on the financing of the transition with 5 billion per year earmarked for the transition. AXA as an insurance company, especially, as I said a few minutes ago, concerning the financing of the sectors in the transition with 6 billion of aggregate premia for the period between 2024 and 2026, so to help us to ensure and protect that transition, and also via our AXA climate entity, we should supply services to companies regarding the ecological transition, as you see here in this slide. And the last chapter is AXA as a responsible company. We could call the net zero objective we have for AXA by 2030, but also an increase in the volunteering concept we have within AXA for our employees at Tuca to achieve 50% of employees involved in that kind of venture by 2026. So that really sums up what I had to say on the performance of AXA and the implementation of our objectives. Thank you for your attention.
Je remercie Frédéric.
Thank you, Frederic. And now I'd like us to go back to the question of AXA's involvement in favor of society. As we said, the increased risk environment we're living in creates new obligations for AXA vis-à-vis those who are relying on us. And we'll now screen a video which will detail out more concretely AXA's societal commitment.
La planète est notre seul vrai bien commun et nous avons tous intérêt à la préserver.
La fréquence des événements climatiques extrêmes, c'est une réalité qui n'est pas niable.
De façon inéluctable, nous allons vers 2 degrés en moyenne planétaire, 3 degrés en France.
Pouvons-nous aujourd'hui être optimistes ?
Chacun a un rôle à jouer dans la lutte contre le réchauffement climatique. Les États, les collectivités, les individus, les ONG.
On peut lier la réflexion et l'action, et on a besoin des deux.
Une des premières conséquences du réchauffement climatique, c'est l'accroissement des inégalités.
We should all fight for our rights, for the rights of children, for the rights of women, and for the rights of every human being.
L'activité des entreprises est-elle incompatible avec le progrès social ? Eh bien, je crois que c'est tout le contraire.
C'est pour ça que nous sommes là avec l'assurance inclusive. C'est pour pousser les frontières de l'assurabilité.
Le rôle des entreprises est de prendre soin de leurs collaborateurs.
AXA continuera à s'engager pour protéger le plus grand nombre. C'est notre ambition, mais surtout notre responsabilité.
Bonjour. On ne peut pas dissocier le réchauffement climatique du fonctionnement de nos sociétés. Les entreprises ont un rôle à jouer et ce rôle, c'est de contribuer effectivement dans leur domaine à la diminution des émissions de gaz à effet de serre, en tout cas d'avoir un effet d'entraînement et bien sûr aussi de regarder du côté de l'adaptation. Donc il y a un rôle très important de l'assureur, je dirais, dans la viabilité de l'économie face à ces conséquences du réchauffement climatique qui sont multiples. Le secteur assurantiel peut être un des moteurs de l'adaptation.
L'assurance a par nature évidemment un rôle social, sociétal très important puisqu'elle est en première ligne pour exercer sa mission de protection face au risque. En tant qu'investisseurs, ce que nous voulons, c'est vraiment apporter du capital à l'économie bas carbone, mais aussi aux secteurs qui doivent se décarboner. Nous avons d'ores et déjà atteint plus de 30 milliards d'investissements verts depuis 2019 et nous allons continuer dans les années qui viennent. Aujourd'hui, que voyons-nous ? Nous voyons un panorama de risques qui s'est profondément transformé avec des risques de plus en plus interconnectés. Risques climat, risques santé, risques sociaux. Si on devait résumer le défi qui se présente à nous, c'est vraiment celui de l'assurabilité. C'est une question que nous posent nos clients, que nous posent les gouvernements, que nous pose la société tout entière, afin de faire en sorte que un monde plus durable soit aussi un monde qui reste assurable.
Pour faire face aux inondations dans le Nord-Pas-de-Calais, la première manière dont on a accompagné nos clients, c'est la prévention. En tant qu'assureur, directeur de région, sur le terrain, au contact des agents généraux, on est particulièrement sensible aux risques climatiques. Et en fait, on voit directement les effets du dérèglement climatique sur nos clients, sur nos assurés. On a des événements de grande ampleur qui se multiplient. On a les inondations qui sont arrivées très récemment dans le nord de la France et maintenant même en Bourgogne. Mais on a aussi eu des événements de sécheresse qui ont provoqué des dégâts importants. Et donc ça fait des sollicitations plus importantes pour nos agents qui se doivent de mieux conseiller, mieux accompagner leurs clients. Dans un village, il y a 2 acteurs importants, le maire et l'agent général AXA. On va dire que de manière générale, nos contrats couvrent bien les risques, nos clients sont bien assurés. On a aussi, pour ce genre d'événement de grande ampleur, la possibilité de faire appel à AXA Entraide. AXA Entraide, c'est une association qui va aider nos clients, mais pas que, l'ensemble des habitants qui sont touchés dans ce genre d'événement. On a aussi fait appel au fonds de solidarité d'AXA Prévention. C'est un fonds qui va venir aider nos clients et l'ensemble des habitants sinistrés de cette zone, qui n'ont pas les bons contrats, qui n'ont pas les bonnes couvertures d'assurance, et qui peuvent se retrouver dans des situations de détresse financière très très fortes. Mais on sent qu'on doit faire beaucoup plus en termes de conseils, en termes de prévention aussi, pour accompagner nos assurés, pour accompagner nos clients.
La mission d'AXA Climate, c'est de faire prendre conscience que l'adaptation climatique, c'est pas qu'une question de risque, et même pas du tout. C'est pas juste construire des lignes Maginot, se protéger contre des inondations. La conviction d'AXA Climate, c'est que derrière la contrainte et le risque climatique, il y a un potentiel d'adaptation beaucoup plus large des entreprises qui vont leur permettre de changer leur modèle économique, de remettre de l'épanouissement dans le monde du travail, de changer les organisations et de se réatterrir dans les territoires pour le bien du vivant, humain et non humain. Et pour les adapter, pour les aider à s'adapter, ce qu'on fait chez AXA Climate, c'est qu'on leur donne de la science, du savoir scientifique, pour leur permettre en fait de se former, de comprendre les risques à 2030-2050 sur leurs actifs physiques, des parcelles agricoles, des sièges sociaux, des usines, et de déclencher des bons réflexes d'adaptation pour l'entreprise de manière à la rendre plus résiliente, donc plus assurable dans les prochaines décennies. Il y a 100 000 actifs dans le monde pour lesquels on a mesuré l'impact climatique réel et précis à 2030-2050, ce qui vont permettre à ces sites de s'adapter. Chez AXA Climate, on forme 6 millions de personnes dans le monde à la compréhension de ces enjeux climatiques, de biodiversité, et donc on a massifié finalement la formation par le digital pour qu'elle pénètre et elle infuse dans l'ensemble des grandes organisations. La conséquence de cette conception d'adaptation pour l'assureur, c'est qu'il dépasse son métier, il dépasse son produit d'assurance, et donc il devient un acteur de la formation comme on l'est devenu, ce qui n'est pas un hasard.
Bien, l'impact économique du groupe AXA dans le monde et en France a bien sûr plusieurs facettes. Il y a une contribution très directe via l'emploi. Le groupe AXA, c'est 147 000 employés et agents, une masse salariale de 8,6 milliards d'euros dans le monde. Ce sont des recrutements, 17 000 dans le monde en 2023, dont 6 000 en France. Le groupe AXA verse un montant d'impôts, de taxes, de cotisations sociales qui dépasse 11 milliards d'euros dans le monde, dont 36% simplement pour la France. Donc voilà une contribution très directe, très sensible à l'activité économique. Et puis il y a une contribution qui est davantage indirecte, mais qui n'en est pas moins importante. Sans le service d'assurance que nous rendons, eh bien, les entreprises, les particuliers que nous assurons ne pourraient pas contribuer autant qu'ils le font à l'activité économique mondiale. Pourquoi ? Parce que leur prise de risque serait bien évidemment plus limitée. Si chaque particulier, chaque entreprise devait se prémunir isolément contre les grands risques, eh bien cela se traduirait par la nécessité de maintenir en permanence un niveau d'épargne totalement excessif qui entraverait l'économie mondiale.
Le rôle des entreprises est effectivement de prendre soin des collaborateurs. Nous avons donc lancé ce programme qui s'appelle We Care. Nous offrons, je dirais, des congés parentaux partout dans le monde au moment de la naissance ou de l'adoption d'un enfant. Nous offrons aussi une protection contre les violences domestiques et intrafamiliales. Et puis enfin, nous nous sommes engagés aussi pour aider nos salariés qui sont aidants, c'est-à-dire ceux qui doivent soutenir un parent qui est âgé ou bien un enfant en situation de handicap ou un enfant qui aurait une maladie chronique. Nous offrons à ces salariés 10 demi-journées pour qu'ils puissent justement accompagner un enfant ou un parent dans un rendez-vous médical. Donc oui, c'est absolument de la responsabilité d'une entreprise comme la nôtre et des entreprises de s'engager dans ces domaines de protection des collaborateurs. Ce qu'il y a de spécifique chez AXA, c'est sa culture. C'est ce qui fait qu'une petite mutuelle de l'ouest de la France est devenue en 40 ans un leader mondial. Et dans le plan qui s'ouvre, notre volonté, c'est encore plus de grandir cette culture, de l'ancrer dans le quotidien, à la fois en interne pour nos collaborateurs, mais aussi que cette culture irrigue les actions que nous avons pour la société.
J'ajoute toujours que une des premières conséquences du réchauffement climatique, c'est l'accroissement des inégalités. Et nous sommes dans un monde où les inégalités sont croissantes.
C'est pour ça que nous sommes là avec l'assurance inclusive. L'assurance inclusive permet aux plus vulnérables d'un point de vue financier d'avoir un filet de sécurité et une main tendue pour réfléchir à l'avenir. Ça concerne des pans entiers de la population mondiale. 70% dans les marchés émergents, 25% dans les marchés matures. Ce sont des produits accessibles, abordables et attractifs. Aujourd'hui, chez AXA, nous couvrons donc 14 millions de personnes dans les pays émergents et sommes en train d'ouvrir ce marché de l'assurance inclusive à 8 pays en Europe.
C'est précisément parce que les entreprises vont continuer à créer de la richesse de manière probablement plus responsable qu'à une époque, qu'il y aura possibilité de dégager des ressources pour le progrès social.
Une société ne peut pas se construire et avoir confiance en l'avenir si ses assureurs ne protègent qu'une partie de la population.
Malgré la transformation et l'amplification des risques, notre conviction, c'est que le monde doit rester assurable.
Cette transition, on se doit de la faire et voilà, de s'y engager collectivement.
Après ce
Thank you. This was indeed a very nice film. Let's now move into the more, let's say, statutory part of our general meeting. And before I give the floor to our next speaker, who is Guillaume Faury, Chairman of the Compensation Governance and Sustainable Development Committee, he will present the company's corporate governance and executive compensation policy in a minute. But before that, I just wanted to say a couple of words so as to thank the members of the board, and especially André-François Poncet, whose term is due to expire at the end of this meeting and who has not decided to stand for re-election. He has, over a period of 8 years, contributed very valuably to the proceedings of our board. He's brought to the board his unfailing support and commitment, and I'd like to wish him all the best for the future and thank him heartily.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As chairman of the committee in charge of compensation, governance and sustainable development, I'd like to render an account to you of governance and the proceedings of our board and this committees in 2023 in that regard, but also report to you on the compensation policy for our executive corporate officers. As you'll see on the screen today, that is before the changes proposed to your general meeting here today, to date, therefore, our board has comprised 16 members. 56% of them are women and 44% are men, 8 different nationalities. We have 62.5% of the board members are deemed to be independent directors within the meaning of the AFEP-MEDEF code that we have here in France. And that code recommends that the representatives of employees and employee shareholders should be excluded from the calculation. So we are even at a level of more than 75% of independent directors if we do the computation that way. Beyond this balanced representation of men and women and beyond this good number of independent directors, the composition of our board is also in line with the diversity policy that our board set itself, underpinned by a quest for the right balance to be achieved between the technical skills and the professional experience of board members, and also achieving diversity in terms of age, nationality and culture within the board. You will note that the term of office of 7 directors is due to expire at the end of this meeting today, including the term of the chairman of the board of directors, Antoine Gosset-Granville. As you can see, the members of the board whose term is due to expire today have their photograph surrounded with a light blue circle on the screen. Well, there was the previous slide. Anyway, what is proposed then today? Firstly, regarding the chairman, the board proposes to re-elect for a duration of 4 years Mr. Antoine Gosset-Granville to the board, so as in particular to enable our board to continue availing of his great experience of the business world in general, his in-depth knowledge of the financial sector, financial industry, and also the regulatory environment of the financial industry, and also avail of his skills in the areas of risk and internal control. Additionally, subject to renewal today of his term of office as board member, the board of directors decided to renew Antoine Gosset-Granville as chairman of the board at the meeting which will be held after this general meeting. We've seen from the conclusions of the evaluation of the performance of the board conducted this year by an external consultant, and specifically concerning the role of the chairman, we've seen that the board members appreciate the valuable contributions of Antoine Gosset-Granville as chairman, his contributions to the proceedings of the board, especially through his leadership style that's very inclusive, and his ability to open debates, lead debates, and conclude debates. And the board thought that all of these qualities, but also his skills in terms of governance, his knowledge of the regulatory topics of importance to us, and his knowledge of the challenges of the group should enable him to continue to efficiently chair our board for the coming number of years. Also, it's been proposed that we should renew also for the usual duration of 4 years the terms of office of Ms. Claudine Delbos and Ms. Isabel Hudson, whose resumes are displayed on the screen. Then it's proposed to you that you should renew the terms of office of Ms. Angeline Kemna and Ms. Marie-France Tudin as board members for a duration that is deliberately a bit shorter, 3 years, so as to guarantee the proper staggering of the different terms of office of the members of our board of directors going forward. Also, you'll notice that André-François Poncet, whose term is due to expire at the end of this meeting, he's decided, as you know, to not stand for re-election. Hence, we will not propose anybody to be elected in his stead, or we won't, of course, propose his re-election either. And that enables us to continue reducing the size of our board of directors in line with the recommendation that came from the evaluation process of the board that was conducted in 2022 and confirmed in 2023. Then we would move from a 16-member board to a 15-member board. To conclude on this chapter, the term of office of Ms. Helen Brown, who is a member of the board of directors representing employee shareholders, her term is due to expire following this meeting, and it's proposed that we should make an appointment of a member of the board on the proposal of the employee shareholders of the AXA Group to represent those employee shareholders. Now, in line with the regulations applicable and the Articles of Association of the company, the employee shareholders of the group were contacted at the end of 2023 and the start of 2024 so as to enable them to appoint candidates for the appointment among the employee shareholders. Following that consultation process, there were 6 candidates that were shortlisted. Mr. Stéphane Bolliger, Ms. Helen Brown, Mr. Olivier Eugène, Mr. Benjamin Saunier, Mr. Marc Sandrix, and Mr. Detlef Tiedijk. Now, the percentage of votes obtained by each candidate following the internal electoral process is displayed on the screen behind me. As you can see, Ms. Helen Brown obtained the strongest support by the employee shareholders. Consequently, taking account of the quality of her first term of office, as illustrated by the results of the evaluation of the performance of the board of directors, the board decided to recommend her appointment as the board member representing employee shareholders. In summary, subject to the outcome of your votes, of course, the board should, following this meeting, be composed of 15 members. Therefore, instead of 16, 9 then of these 15 members would be independent. Also, we have 9 of these 15 members who are women. And in line with the regulations, if we don't take account for the calculation of the 2 representatives of the employees and the 2 representatives, that is, one representing the employees and the other representing the employee shareholders, then we would end up with 6 women and 6 men, an absolute 50-50 breakdown between men and women on our board. So now we have on the screen a summary of the functioning of our board of directors. The board is underpinned in its work by its three committees: the Audit Committee, the Finance and Risk Committee, and the committee responsible for compensation, governance and sustainable development. Now, the internal rules of the Board of Directors details out, in particular, the role and the responsibilities of the board and its committees and the decisions that come within its exclusive remit. The internal rules of the Board of Directors contains principles concerning governance, some of which go beyond the French legal requirements, especially concerning the presence of independent board members within the committees. So each committee is chaired by an independent director. The Audit Committee is totally composed of independent directors. The committee responsible for compensation, governance and sustainable development is entirely composed of independent directors, with the exception of the lady director representing the employees who sits on that committee, in line with the recommendations handed down by the AFEP-MEDEF Code. And also the executive corporate officers of AXA may not be members of these committees. Each committee issues for the board opinions, proposals or recommendations within its own purview. French law does not grant any decision-making power, however, to the board committees. The chairpersons of the committees present a report to the board following each meeting of the committee in question. Concerning now the proceedings of the board, but also the board committees, fiscal 2023 was marked by sustained activity with, in particular, the preparation of the new strategic plan that was presented and the implementation of the standard, which is IFRS 17. The board of directors met 10 times with an average attendance ratio of 97%, and the three committees of the board, for their part, held all told 21 meetings with an average attendance rate of 94%. Concerning the main topics that the board had to address during the past financial year, I could mention, apart from the strategic plan and IFRS 17, the group's strategy in terms of sustainable development, including concerning the climate, the strategy concerning reinsurance, the review and approval of the annual and half-yearly accounts, capital management, plans for divestments and acquisitions of a significant size, the Solvency II reports and policies, the preemptive recovery plan of the group, the review of its composition and the independence of its members, the performance and the compensation of the CEO, and the succession plans of the corporate management. Also, there are several training sessions that were organized by the chairman for the members on, in particular, the digitalization that must be done to have an efficient, sustainable future. Also, generative artificial intelligence, the implementation of IFRS 17 accounting standards, and science and climate change as delivered by AXA Climate. As every year, the board also conducted an evaluation of its own functioning. As I said earlier, this exercise was conducted under the supervision of the Compensation, Governance and Sustainable Development Committee, which supervised the process, but it was conducted, therefore, by an external consultant selected following a tendering process, taking in particular account of their experience in terms of board of directors evaluation, taking account, of course, of their independence and their knowledge of our industry. So that evaluation process was conducted, and in that context, each board member responded to a questionnaire online and then was available for an interview with the consultant in order to, in particular, evaluate the progress achieved compared with the previous self-evaluation process, the composition and the functioning of the board and its committees, and also the role of the chairman and the relations between the board and the management, and the alignment of the board with the strategy of the group, especially concerning sustainable development. During the individual interviews that were conducted, the board members also were queried on the individual contribution of all of the other members to the proceedings of the board. On this occasion, the board members confirmed that the functioning of the board of directors remains very positive in terms of the momentum, the dynamics, and the performance of the board. They also acknowledged the significant progress achieved following the recommendations that were presented in 2022, in the previous financial year. The main improvement points that were identified on the occasion of the last self-evaluation exercise concern the following orientations. Firstly, that we might contemplate appointing a board member with experience in the insurance industry during the next round of appointments of board members to bolster our skills in the board regarding the insurance industry. Also establish a work plan so as to address in a detailed manner the strategic topics connected with the activity of the group. Also revisit the process for the approval of plans to merge and acquire companies. Also make more operational the assignments of each of the committees and of the board itself when it comes to the sustainable development piece. After this first chapter concerning the governance of AXA, I suggest we now move on to the part that concerns the policy for the compensation of our corporate officers.
In line with the legal provisions, you are invited to approve the remuneration paid or awarded in 2023 to each executive corporate officer, as well as the remuneration policy applicable to the executive corporate officers in 2024. In this context, you will find summarized in the table on the screen the various components of the remuneration of the executive corporate officers of AXA. The short-term cash compensation is made up of a fixed compensation and part of an annual variable compensation. Come then the deferred remuneration elements made up of the other part of the annual remuneration and of the performance shares. This remuneration structure aims at promoting the convergence of the interests of management with those of the company and its shareholders over the medium and the long term. As submitted specifically last year to the general meeting, the board, on proposal of the Governance and Sustainable Development Compensation Committee, has decided to set the annual target annual remuneration in cash of the CEO at 3,400,000 euros. It is made up of a fixed remuneration and a target variable remuneration. The annual fixed remuneration of the CEO stands at 1,650,000 euros, and the annual target variable remuneration, which is fully submitted to demanding performance conditions and aligned with the strategy of the group, amounts to 1,750,000 euros. And this cash target remuneration for the CEO remain unchanged in 2024. Besides, in order to involve the CEO in the creation of value over the long term, the board awards him each year LTIs, which are long-term incentives, in the form of performance shares. Such performance shares are fully subject to strict performance conditions, which are demanding and do not guarantee a minimum gain. In addition, the CEO does not benefit any additional top-up pension regime. He benefits, similarly to the other French management executives, he benefits from the performance shares plan dedicated to his retirement. Lastly, he benefits from a compensation if his role is terminated, submitted to an amount initially fixed at 12 months of his remuneration, increased by one additional month by any senior year without being able to exceed 24 months. I suggest that we examine the variable remuneration allocated for 2023 to the CEO. The assessment of the annual performance of the CEO is based on two components: the performance of the group, accounting for 70%, and the individual performance, accounting for 30%. The group's performance is assessed based on 4 criteria: the underlying earnings per share, the cash remittance, the reduction of the carbon footprint in the assets for the group's own account, and the customer referral index. The indicators chosen are directly related to the strategic directions of the group and rely on reaching an amount or a target score previously set. Shown on the screen, the weighting of each one of these indicators, as well as to what extent they were reached in 2023. The performance of the group in 2023 stands at 112%. The individual performance of the chief executive is assessed based on specific goals which are reconsidered each year. Different indicators and qualitative and quantitative goals are set by the board in a so-called mission letter, which is written at the start of the year. In 2023, the board assessed Thomas Buberl individual performance based on the following goals set in this letter. First of all, implementing the current strategic plan, whose results were presented. Secondly, drafting the next strategic plan. Thirdly, the right operation of the management committee of the group. And fourthly, the opportunities to optimize the group's scope. The individual performance of the chief executive for 2023 was assessed by the board, standing at 116%. The actual variable remuneration for 2023 paid out to the chief executive, provided you approve it, amounts to 1,981,000 euros. That is 113.2% of its target variable remuneration. Pursuant to the remuneration policy approved by your general meeting, the board has renewed for the CEO a deferred payment mechanism of a part equal to 30% of his variable remuneration for 2023. In line with this mechanism, the deferred amount of the variable remuneration shall be paid out in 3 tranches, respectively in 2025, 26, and 27. The amount actually paid out could vary depending on the share price within the limit of capping equal of 130% of the deferred amount. The presence of that deferred part within the variable remuneration, even though not required by the French regulation, is aimed at reinforcing the alignment of AXA with the international practices and regulations in the sector of financial services when it comes to its top managers' remuneration. I suggest that we look now at the remuneration of the chair of the board. During his appointment and in line with the recommendations of the AFEP-MEDEF code, the board felt that the best suited remuneration structure was to pay to the chair of the board only a fixed remuneration. As part of the setting of the amount of this fixed remuneration, the board consulted an external consultant in order to know the practices of remuneration applied for similar roles in CAC 40 companies and in the main European companies in the financial sector, but also taking into account the expertise and experience of Antoine Gosset-Grainville, as well as the missions that it was decided to allocate him. The board decided to set the amount of the annual remuneration of the board at 925,000 euros. It is suggested to maintain the remuneration of the chair of the board unchanged in 2024. AXA, besides, is undertaking a policy of allocation of performance shares to its employees in France and abroad. All the those who benefited from this, who are about 6,000, who are 6,000 in 2023-24, are subject to performance conditions at the rate of 100%. The performance criteria reconsidered by the board at the end of 2023 are dealing for the management with the performance of the operational entity, the financial performance of the group, and the performance in terms of sustainable development of the group. Lastly, in line with the best practices, as well as taking into account the recommendations of the regulators of the financial sectors and other stakeholders, the performance shares awarded to the CEO not only are subject to a vesting period of 3 years, come along with 2 years where he cannot vest them. In March 2024, 130,922 performance shares with an IFRS value of €3,144,746 were awarded to the CEO. I underline lastly that the allocation of performance shares are made without any dilution for the shareholder, given that we have chosen to deliver the existing shares. Now, the remuneration elements of the AXA managers, which have reviewed with you, which are even further detailed in the universal document of AXA, which you can find on the internet. Please consult it if you wish further details. Lastly, a few words on the group's policy in terms of employee shareholding and the participation of employees in the AXA capital. As indicated previously, AXA has been undertaking for a long time a proactive policy in terms of shareholding for employees. Each year, the group proposes to employees in France and internationally an employee shareholding transaction, which is called share plan, in the form of a capital rights issue, which is just for them in 2023 for the 23,000 employees in 40 countries. The total amount was nearly 348 million euros, corresponds to issuance of nearly 14 million new shares. In order to eliminate the dilutive effect of the share plan, as in previous year, we bought out and cancelled an equivalent number of shares, and at the end of December 2023, the employees and agents of the group held 4.34% of the capital and 6.16% of the voting rights of the company. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Je remercie Guillaume pour cette présentation.
Thank you, Guillaume, for that very comprehensive presentation. I'd also like to indicate that the report on corporate governance is drawn up in line with the provisions of the French Commercial Code. That's articles L225 to 37 and the following ones, and L22-10-8 of the French Commercial Code. And, of course, that corporate governance report is included in AXA's 2023 annual report. At this point, I'd like to ask Ms. Bénédicte Vignon of PricewaterhouseCoopers Audit and Olivier Durand of Ernst & Young Audit to kindly present their reports to our general meeting.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders. We issued 6 reports to be submitted to your general meeting this year. I'd like to present to you a summary of the reports on the annual accounts and the consolidated accounts, and then give the floor to my colleague, Olivier Durand, to present to you the report on the related party agreements and the reports concerning transactions involving the capital of the company and the issuance of securities. Concerning our reports on the annual accounts and the consolidated accounts, we'd like to recall that the fundamental objective of our assignment consists of obtaining reasonable assurance about the fairness, the truthfulness, and the of the accounts, and the fact that these accounts represent a faithful image of the accounts of the company, and the fact that also these accounts don't comprise any material misstatements. To that end, we were helped and supported by the audit work conducted by our 2 firms in all of the significantly sized entities of the group that is in the consolidation scope of the AXA Group. Firstly, the report on the annual accounts of the AXA SA company. We issued an opinion that certifies in an unqualified manner the accounts that were approved by the Board of Directors. In terms of the key audit matters, we developed our appraisals on the basis of the evaluation of the investment securities and also the evaluation of the provisions for claims on the reinsurance contracts. Concerning the other specific verifications provided for by law, especially information communicated in the management report, we have no observation to make. The second report that we issued on the consolidated accounts of the AXA Group, we also issued an opinion which was a non-qualified certification of the accounts of the group. The year 2023 was marked by the initial enforcement of the IFRS 17 standard relating to insurance policies. And this is reflected in the key audit matters that we developed. Starting off with the evaluation of the impact of the initial enforcement of this new standard, IFRS 17, and then two key audit matters with respect to the valuation of liabilities in the insurance policies of the life and health business lines on the one hand, and also concerning the claims that occurred in policies held with respect to P&C insurance on the other hand. And finally, a fourth key audit matter, which was identical to previous years, relating to the valuation of the recoverable value of goodwill. Concerning the management report of the group, we have no observations to make on the truthfulness and the correspondence of this report with the consolidated accounts and with the information communicated in this report. We also indicate that the presentation of the consolidated accounts respects the new European electronic format ESCF. Thank you for your attention. Olivier Durand. Now, I'd like to talk about the related party agreements. Pages we have pages 43 and 44 of the notice of the meeting that mention this, and pages 140 and 141 of the universal registration document that refer in detail to these matters. Also, resolution number 10. Now, we don't intend to give an opinion on how useful these are or how well-founded they are. I just want to recall the objective of the work we have done. Therefore, the agreement submitted to approval by this general meeting, we'd like to inform you that we weren't given information on any authorized agreement concluded since the closure of the past financial year that should be submitted to this general meeting for approval by virtue of the provisions of Article L225/38 of the Commercial Code and Article or 3227 to Article 327 of the Insurance Code. The related party agreement that was approved during previous years, whose execution was pursued during the past financial year, you've got the details on. Now, on the slide, concerning transactions involving the capital of the company and the issuance of securities, that's for the extraordinary general meeting. That's resolutions 22 and 23 at your meeting. Here we're talking about an increase in capital by the issuance of ordinary shares or securities of the company reserved for the members of a corporate savings plan, with a waiver of the preferential subscription rights of the shareholders. That's resolution 22, a rights issue. And then capital increase by way of issuing ordinary shares with a waiver of the preferential subscription rights of shareholders in favour of a category of beneficiary that is determined. That's resolution 23. And the maximum common cap here is 135 million euro. That's the power value. And delegation of powers to the board of directors with the possibility of sub-delegation being considered for a period of 18 months. So we have no particular observations, therefore, to make on the arrangements made to determine the issuance price of the ordinary shares to be issued, given in the report supplied by your board of directors. The definitive conditions of the capital increase, of course, have not been set down, so we cannot express an opinion on them, and therefore the proposal to waive preferential subscription rights that's made to you here today. We shall draw up additional reports if necessary, as and when such capital increases are decided upon by your board. Then the last report concerns resolution number 24. This is a report concerning a proposed reduction of capital by way of cancellation of ordinary shares that were purchased, would be purchased. The idea is to delegate power to the board of directors, with sub-delegation being a possibility, of course, for a period of 18 months. Limitation here of 10% of the equity per period of 24 months. In conclusion, we have no observation to make on the causes and conditions of the capital reduction contemplated. Thank you for your attention.
Je remercie les commissaires.
Thank Thank you to our auditors for presenting your reports, and more particularly Benedict Vignon and PricewaterhouseCoopers Audit, whose term is due to expire following this meeting. Before we go on to a Q&A session with the room, I'd like to dwell for a minute on our shareholder relations arrangements. As I said at the start of our meeting, shareholders, especially individual shareholders, are stakeholders, core stakeholders in our company, and we'd like to tighten the bonds that unite us and listen to you more and develop with each of you active relations. And it's to that end that we recently made available to you training concerning climate challenges. And let's have a look at a short film that concerns our relations with our shareholders.
We will now open up the floor for questions and answers. I'd like to inform you that prior to our meeting, we received one email containing written questions from the Forum pour l'investissement responsable, focusing in particular on environmental, social, and governance issues. These questions, as well as the answers provided by the board of directors, are posted on the company's website under the heading Written Questions. By the way, let me remind you that a customer standard with AXA Expert is available At the entrance of this annual general meeting, our teams of experts are on hand to answer them if your questions are related to a contract, a claim, or otherwise. For this Q&A session, it is my pleasure to welcome Ulrike de Koene, Senior Vice President, Corporate Communications, Brand and Sustainable Development, Alban de Maïnel, Group Chief Financial Officer, Guillaume Bory, Chief Financial Officer, AXA France, Patrick Cohen, Managing Director, Europe and Health, Karima Sylvant, Group Human Resources Director, and François Gilles, Group Risk Director. I would now like to open the floor for discussion. I would therefore ask shareholders in the room who wish to ask questions to please make yourselves known to the hostesses who are in this room. And in order to give the floor to the greatest possible number of questions, I would ask you, insofar as possible, to be concise in your contributions. I have a question from the floor. Sir. Jean-Luc Bordeaux. Climate warming is increasingly visible daily, as we have been able to see it, especially in the northern part of France. My question is, facing these wide-ranging, more frequent elements, how do you see your mission to act in order to protect us with the need to quickly and efficiently serve policyholders who are suffering and who have suffered damage? Thank you for your question. Thomas Boubel and Frédéric de Courtois have said our strategy is very much proactive when it comes to contributing to the fight against climate unsettlement and adapting the economy and our societies in parallel to this group policy. Obviously, our concern is to serve the most efficiently and the most rapidly our customers when they face these kinds of claims. Perhaps Guillaume Bory, as AXA France officer, could shed some practical light on this will to act rapidly and efficiently towards our customers. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for your question, sir. Maybe to illustrate more concretely how we support our customers in such situations, a few elements in 2023, which in France were marked mainly by climate-related events. Some rough estimates to start with. In France, on average, we manage 3,300 claims each day, Saturday, Sunday included. So this shows you the number of claims for retail customers, 1 million, more than 1,300,000 claims, out of which 1/3 or so is related one way or another to a climate-related event. In terms of volume, in 2023, 450 million euros were dedicated to compensating climate-related claims in France, out of which 450 million euros for our policyholders. And there again, to give you a rough estimate, a ballpark estimate, that's more than 1 million euros each day, including the weekend, to compensate climate-related claims. So you see, this is fully part of our business and our daily missions, so which requires the involvement of our people in operations and our tied agents in the field. This was illustrated early on in the video about AXA societal commitment and of all the partners which contribute to compensating claims. Adjusters that, but also our repair garages and so on, especially. And in 2023, the dwellings, houses suffered a flood. The major events related to the climate took place mainly in the last quarter, especially the storms Caramel and Indondo and the floods in the North Pas-de-Calais region, which were very violent, with especially lasted very long because water in certain areas remained stagnant for at least a month and a half inside houses. During these moments, we give priority to a special group which is dedicated fully to these climate-related claims. This is about compensation, intervening as quickly as possible. Let me point out that regarding the Boston storms and the floods in the north of France, most of these claims have been closed. It represents, all in all, 35,000 different policyholders. And for those where it's not settled yet, it's in cases where you need to do some additional sanitation works. And it's not that we haven't taken care of these policyholders, but beyond this, and I will be to the point here, bear in mind that beyond the organization, our business is much broader than this. We need to act in terms of prevention, and this is why, for example, that we have in France, we launched Ma Commune en Action, which supports the mayors of the small boroughs and communities to help them come up with their prevention plans against natural risk. And in the fall stores, we see difference between claims where you had prevention plans and communities where you didn't have this. So this is a practical difference then when it comes to the resilience in the face of climate-related events. The second chapter beyond prevention is how to encourage our own customers to adjust to the consequences of climate changes. And in this regard, it was indicated before by Thomas Bubel and Frédéric de Courtois. We launched several weeks ago the generalization of the green cover, and now every AXA policyholder has access to that green cover, which enables, after a claim, to repair things with the aim of emitting less carbon, especially the energy renovation of their homes. So we need to act across all these prevention, adjustment, and then compensation. We will continue with all the energy of our teams in the next few years, which is probably the biggest challenge for our activity. Thank you, Guillaume. There are many questions. Number 5. Mr. Mormont, individual shareholder, since for over 10 years. I thank you, first of all, for your earnings, which are very satisfactory despite the challenging last years, I have 2 questions to start with. And before that, in surprising light of the more and more unpredictable risks related to the environment, to the climate, geopolitical elements, and the impact of extreme natural phenomena, my first question is, could you, and do you think you can accomplish the total success of the forecast of your goals via the strategic plan, while ensuring the return on investment for your stakeholders? Second question now. Ensure the long-lastingness of so-called assurability, at what price and for whom? Partly you gave an answer around this. Beyond inclusive insurance, isn't it a challenge for an acceptable future for everyone? Thank you for your answers. Thank you for your excellent questions, sir. I believe the answer is in financial discipline. If you want to both protect and assurability, as we call it, in the service we provide to our policyholders, whether commercial insurance or personal lines, whilst reaching our financial goals, the right answer is to force ourselves to be very disciplined. And this is carried out by Thomas Bubel and his teams has been so for the last few years in order to constantly improve performance and therefore improve the service to our customers and also improve our financial results. Thomas, would you like to supplement this answer? Thank you for this question. We are in a world which is not easy, with risks that we haven't seen for so many years. This plan that we just launched on the 22nd of February is positioned in an environment which we haven't seen for so long, with new risks. But as you saw, and this is what I've shown on the positioning of AXA, the word diversification should come to your mind. This is the key word. In a challenging environment that is also unpredictable, you need to be very diversified. And this is a strategy we opted for, which is to diversify geographically, diversify as well our business lines, personal lines, and commercial lines, and also based on a very strong balance sheet. 217% of solvency entails that you have 2.17 times the necessary capital if there is a shock that comes every 200 years. It should reassure you, and it reassures us that we can make it for our customers, but for society at large, because you are quite right, in this situation in which it becomes increasingly challenging for many people to be insured, it is our obligation and our responsibility to also find solutions for those who cannot be covered today by the solutions that we offer. Therefore, our major initiative on social inclusion in emerging countries and also takes place in mature countries with 20 million policyholders. It's not nothing. It's something. Thank you very much. Let's continue. Let's move to the rear of the room. Question number 10.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon. I'd like to hear your opinion on AXA's shareholdership. I mean, the ultimate shareholdership, but I'm talking about direct and indirect, and the big international shareholders. And behind my question is the following concern. It's the adventure of a company called Commercial Union some years ago. They were the leading UK firm, number 2 in Europe, and globally they ranked very well, but they exploded in mid-flight thanks to the intervention of an Australian shareholder who represented less than 5% of the equity and who really, did. So what's the risk of AXA finding itself facing activist shareholders? Thank you, says the chairman. AXA has a sound and balanced shareholdership, diversified too. We have core shareholders made up by the mutuelle of AXA itself. We have a very large number of individual retail shareholders represented by yourselves here today. We have a large volume of employee shareholders, and we have a certain number of institutional investors as well among our shareholders who have stakes that are limited to 3%, 4% each in the equity base. So we have a sound and diversified shareholder base. And as well as that, we have a clear strategy, a very convincing strategy, and one that's implemented successfully that protects us against the temptation some people might have to come and meddle in the equity base and in the strategy of the company. Next question, please. Well, thank you, sir, for asking that question, which, of course, was a pertinent one, a useful one. So we'll move to the microphone over there. Microphone number 1, please. Good afternoon, Mr. President. I've got a couple of questions concerning the current world. How is AXA going to tackle the increase in insurance claims given the climate risk, cyber risk as well? I'm thinking of corporate cyber risks, knowing that insurance policies can't be increased. Now, I heard that AXA is investing a lot in artificial intelligence. I heard something like 400 pilot projects and 17 have been shortlisted. And I'd like to know a bit more about that, please. That's my first question. The second question is the following. As an individual shareholder and also in other companies in the CAC 40 index, there are often bonus shares after 2 years given to people who have kept their shares. And I gather that AXA wanted to develop that commitment it would give to individual shareholders. And by going down that road, perhaps it would be a good move because you would have stronger ties with your shareholders. Well, I'll let Thomas answer your first question, perhaps, and give you precise details insofar as possible. On the latter question, you've understood that we have a strong intent to loyalize, indeed, our individual shareholders. We provide them with lots of services and support resources, but we think the best thing we can do for them is good returns, financial returns on their investments, and enable our stock price to climb ever higher. And we're working on that on a priority basis. Mr. Buberl, your first question on the increase in the claims ratio, you're quite right. If we look at the cyber risk that you mentioned and also the risk regarding natural catastrophes, of course, there are two areas where there are high increases in claims. That's regarding the climate-related events and the secondary perils, as we saw in the film. There's drought, floods, that kind of thing, in particular fires as well. And it's clear that right now we're very concerned by all of this. And as we said several times before, it's very important to work with our clients on prevention. Because we see in some of these very big events, for example, look at hurricanes in the US, for example, you recall perhaps Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Irma in the United States, was more or less the same trajectory some years later, but the costs went down over time because of preventative measures. And it's important to reiterate that we've got to help to bring down costs via prevention, take preventive measures for these secondary perils that are a new feature on the landscape. Regarding cyber risks, we've seen there are lots of ransomware attacks these days because it's gone from being an occasional criminal activity to an organized criminal activity. And in that respect, also, it's a question of adding preventive measures to our insurance cover. So instead of the cover being sold alone, we should try and also supply services so as to protect our clients from the outside world with firewall technologies and such like, and also from the inside to avoid phishing emails, being read and clicked on. And also, if something is to happen, it's not a question of if, it's when, really. When can the company resume business as quickly as possible? How quickly can that be? So for us, artificial intelligence, we think, can help us out a lot in three main areas. Firstly, the appraisal of the risk, because for the first time, artificial intelligence, AI, is offering us an opportunity to utilize non-structured data. Lots of data we have are non-structured data. I mean, an engineer doing an evaluation on the architecture of this building will give us his PDF report. It'll be used once and never again. But if we can utilize all of those dispersed data, we can then appraise the risk in a broader manner, in a stronger manner than what we do right now. Same thing for the claims ratio. If I'm more familiar with the claim, if I can better describe the loss because I've learned from previous losses, previous claims, and I know where to direct things, well, it'll help me a lot too at the service of our clients so as to better manage the claims rate. Also, as we said earlier, the whole question of customer service is important. How can we enhance our customer service, the quality of customer service via automation of processes and via the automation of processes that are heavy-duty ones. For example, if you've got a claim in your household for your household insurance, the AXA agent must look at the conditions, 82, whatever. He'll look things up, he'll look at the cover, and it's fairly heavy duty. It's laborious. Whereas if we could automate that process, that person talking to you on the phone could focus then on you as opposed to focusing on the fine print and the Excel spreadsheet to find your terms and conditions. Thank you, says the chairman, Thomas. So we're going to have to move on to vote on the resolutions shortly, but we'll take perhaps one last question if you like. We'll field a question over there at microphone number 5.
Patrick Raison, I represent the National Association of French Shareholders, an insurer. Their calling is to invest in bonds, real estate, shares. Could you indicate the split of your investments? And regarding the real estate, which is going through a major crisis, could you point out what is your vision for the future? And what kind of arbitrage might you come up with? Thank you. Thank you for this question, apparently technical, but very important, though. Alban de Marinel, our CFO, could shed some light on this. Thank you for your question, sir. We invest not only our equity, but also the funds entrusted by our policyholders, especially in the life insurance area, and also the charges for claims that will be settled. So all in all, we invest nearly 450 billion. That's the total of our balance sheet. And we reinvest nearly 30 billion each year. So we have an obligation to secure things in relation to our policyholders. So about less than 80% of our assets actually are bonds, either govies or issued by companies with fairly high ratings. You mentioned the property market. We have about 40 billion, a bit more than 40 million of property in the group, and we focus, or at least we have a strategy which is both to focus on high-quality assets and come up with a sector-based real estate diversification, such as residential or office or logistics, and also geographic diversification, so that we're not dependent on one single market. This has helped us, in particular last year, to come up with adequate performance of our property market. All in all, the valuations were down by 6%. Obviously, it's better when they rise. Nevertheless, compared to the decline in the property in certain markets, in certain areas, it's rather a good performance. Thank you very much, Alban. So I'm really sorry that we have not been able to take all your questions, but I thank you nevertheless. I thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, we have very strict constraints related to timing. I suggest that we now move to the voting on the resolutions.
Afin de
In order to proceed with the voting on the resolutions, Frédéric de Courtois will present how to vote. Look, sir, we spent the time that we could spend on the questions. We had very interesting questions. There's nothing unlawful here. Sir, what is your question?
Il faudrait que quelqu'un donne un micro à monsieur. Alors allez-y, posez votre question à voix forte. Ah non, voilà.
Go ahead, sir. The International Justice Court has recognized the possible Israeli genocide against the Gaza Palestinians in a report entitled, Yes, the lying and denying is not enough. It was published. The Dutch Center of Research on Multinationals, it says it's not only companies, but you, the members of your board, your managers and directors and employees who could be penally liable in the Israeli genocide in Gaza, according to the data coming from Bloomberg that you can all access. The AXA group still owns 270,000 shares, about $2,600,000 in the Israeli bank Abu Alim, which is financing, according to UN, the illegal settlement by Israel and all the massacres. In light of all these elements, why do you continue to support the Abu Alim bank? When will you move out of a bank which is an accomplice of crimes against humanity and involved in genocides? And remind you that AXA's calling, is to protect the populations. And here, this is a genocide. When will we break out of this situation?
Je vous remercie de
I thank you for your question, and I thank you for your interest in our company. I will let Thomas Bubel answer specifically to your question. Let me simply tell you again very clearly and firmly that all our investments strictly respect the principles in terms of human rights and other. Sir, I have listened to your question. Let's listen to Thomas Bubel's answer to your question. I thank you also for this question, because it gives us an opportunity to clarify a certain number of assertions that we've been hearing about in certain social networks. First of all, AXA has no investments in Israeli banks. It's not 200 shares, it's 0 shares that we own in Israeli banks. Banks which are part of a boycotting. And secondly, I'd like to firmly condemn the attacks of sometimes physical attacks which are suffered by our agents and our employees in certain countries by the group that supports the boycott against Israel. Such actions cannot be warranted and are unjustified. We are not taking a stance concerning this geopolitical crisis, which is serious. Our thoughts go a lot to civil victims and casualties because, look, traditionally, we have very strong ties with this region in the Middle East. You ought to know that we have about 2,000 employees in 4 countries: Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, and Lebanon. And we have been investing for decades in those countries in terms of insurance, distribution networks, and customer services. We are not present as an insurer in Israel, but obviously we have an investment strategy of diversification everywhere. We are invested in Israeli companies in line with what the chair underlined, in line with international regulations. But once again, I'd like to assert that it's important. We have 0 investments in Israeli banks, directly or indirectly. And I have a lot of respect for a commitment in favor of a cause, but such a commitment should not be an excuse for being threatened and subject to such vandalist actions. Thank you.
Nous allons maintenant passer.
Let's move on now to vote upon the resolutions. And in order to organize the poll, I'm sorry, says the chairman, there's some noise from somebody in the meeting. If you've got other questions, there are teams available to answer your questions after the meeting. We have to stick to our schedule, I'm sorry, and I'd like to ask Frédéric de Courtois to kindly introduce the arrangements for the electronic voting. Before Frédéric takes the floor, I'd just like to give you the definitive quorum, which is now 71.4%. 71.40%. Frédéric de Courtois. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm back like every year for probably the most important part of our meeting, which is your votes. And I'd like to start off with a certain number of practical points for you. Firstly, I'd like to recall that you have an electronic voting box. It's personalized. On the screen, you can check the number of votes you have or represent for this meeting. To vote on each resolution, you must press firmly on one of the keys. That is for, it's the green button, abstain, yellow button, or against, the red button. Your vote will be displayed for a few seconds on the screen of your box. And in order to vote within the allotted time, please wait for the indication voting is open and limit your vote to 1 vote per resolution. If you do not press any of the buttons, you'll be considered to have abstained from voting. I remind you that the poll is taking place under the supervision of Maître Miele, who is the Commissaire de Justice, the Court Commissioner. Please note that electronic voting machines must be handed back to the hostess at the end of the meeting, and please switch off also your cell phones for the duration of the poll. So we shall now proceed to vote on the resolutions on the agenda for the meeting today. You're being asked to vote on 30 resolutions, 27 of which fall within the remit of the ordinary general meeting, including 5 not approved by the board, and 3 in the remit of the extraordinary general meeting. Lastly, I would remind you that the resolutions falling within the remit of the ordinary general meeting require a majority of more than 50% of the votes cast in order to be approved, whereas those falling within the remit of the extraordinary general meeting require a majority of more than 2/3 of the votes cast. Here again, I propose that we dispense with the verbatim reading of the resolutions submitted to your vote. As indicated at the start of the meeting, these are listed in the notice of meeting published in the Bulletin des Annonces Obligatoires on February the 23rd, 2024, and have been made available to you in accordance with the legal conditions. The first 27 resolutions are submitted to the ordinary general meeting. Now, the first resolution, therefore. The purpose of the first resolution is to approve the parent company financial statements for 2023 financial year. Voting is now open. The poll is now closed. The resolution stands approved. The purpose of the second resolution is to approve the consolidated financial statements for 2023 financial year. The poll is open. The poll is now closed. The resolution is approved. The purpose of the third resolution is to approve the appropriation of earnings and to set the dividend at €1.98 per share. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the fourth resolution is to approve the information mentioned in Part 1 of Article L. 2210(9) of the French Commercial Code concerning remuneration of corporate officers. The poll is now closed. This resolution is carried. The fifth resolution. The purpose of the fifth resolution is to approve the components of compensation paid during or granted in respect of the 2023 fiscal year to Mr. Antoine Gosset-Granville, Chairman of the Board of Directors. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the sixth resolution is to approve the components of compensation paid during or granted in respect of the 2023 fiscal year to Mr. Thomas Buberl, Chief Executive Officer. The vote is now open. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the seventh resolution is to approve the compensation policy applicable to the Chairman of the Board of Directors. The poll is open. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the eighth resolution is to approve the compensation policy applicable to the Chief Executive Officer. The vote is now open.
Le scrutin est clos.
Voting is now closed. The resolution is adopted. The purpose of the ninth resolution is to approve the compensation policy applicable to the directors of the company. The poll is open now. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the 10th resolution is to acknowledge the statutory auditor's special report on agreements referred to in Article L22538 of the French Commercial Code. That's related party agreements. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the 11th resolution is to renew the term of office of Mr. Antoine Gosset-Granville as director for a period of 4 years. The voting is now open. This motion is adopted. The purpose of the 12th resolution is to renew the term of office of Clotilde Delbos as director for a 4-year term. The voting is now open. The resolution is adopted. The 13th resolution. The purpose of this resolution is to renew the term of office of Ms. Isabel Hudson as director for a period of 4 years. Please vote now. The vote is open. The voting is now closed. This motion is carried. The 14th resolution concerns the renewal of the term of office of Ms. Angeline Kemna as director for a term of 3 years. The voting is now open. The voting is now closed, and this resolution is indeed adopted. The purpose of the 15th resolution is to renew the term of office of Marie-France Tudin as director for a term of 3 years. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. This resolution stands approved. The purpose of the vote on the 16th resolution and resolutions A to E is to appoint the employee shareholder representative to AXA's board of directors. The term of office of Ms. Helen Brown, currently director representing employee shareholders, is due to expire at the close of this meeting. You are kindly requested to choose between the 6 candidates whose names appear on the screen. In the 16th resolution, the Board of Directors recommends that you should re-elect Ms. Helen Brown as director representing the employee shareholders of the AXA Group. Resolutions A to E, not approved by the Board of Directors, concern the candidacies of Mr. Stéphane Bolliger, Mr. Olivier Eugène, Mr. Benjamin Saunière, Mark Sundrakes, and Detlef Tiedjek to be appointed to the Board of Directors on the basis of a proposal by the employee shareholders. You are reminded that in the event of several resolutions among the 16th resolution and the resolutions A to E receiving a number of votes in favour of them that is greater than the majority of votes cast by shareholders present or represented, only the resolution with the highest number of votes in favour will be deemed to be adopted, and the other resolutions will be deemed to have been rejected by your meeting. Furthermore, if none of the resolutions included in the 16th resolution and resolutions A to E receives a number of votes in favour exceeding the majority of votes cast by shareholders present or represented, none of the candidates proposed by the employee shareholders would be appointed director by the present general meeting. For the sake of equality between candidates, the outcome of the vote will only be revealed once all 6 resolutions have been put to the vote. For technical reasons, a period of around 30 seconds will be necessary between the vote on each resolution to enable the recording and preparation of the results. The 16th resolution concerns the appointment of Ms. Helen Brown as a director on the proposal of employee shareholders for a term of 4 years. The vote is now open. The vote is now closed. The purpose of Resolution A is to appoint Mr. Stéphane Bolliger to the Board of Directors as director on the proposal of employee shareholders for a term of 4 years. The vote is now open. The poll is now closed. Resolution B. The purpose of this resolution is to appoint Mr. Olivier Eugène to the Board of Directors as Director on the recommendation of employee shareholders for a term of 4 years. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. Resolution C. The purpose of Resolution C is to appoint Mr. Benjamin Saunière to the Board of Directors on the recommendation of employee shareholders for a term of 4 years. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. The purpose of Resolution D is to appoint Mr. Mark Sondrakes as a director on the proposal of employee shareholders for a term of 4 years. The vote is open now. The vote is now closed. The purpose of Resolution E is to appoint Mr. Detlef Tediek to the Board of Directors as Director on the proposal of employee shareholders for a term of 4 years. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. Suspense, says the speaker. Maybe there's a bug in the machine, says the speaker.
Passe à la résolution.
Should I move on to the next resolution? Asked the speaker.
Bien, le suspense.
Well, suspense is over. So, among the 16th resolution and resolutions A to E, the 16th resolution is the only resolution to receive more than half the votes in favour, which is therefore approved, and Ms. Helen Brown is elected as Director representing employee shareholders.
Bravo, chère Hélène.
Well done, Helen. The purpose of the 17th resolution is to appoint KPMG SA as statutory auditor for a period of 6 years. The poll is now open.
Le scrutin est clos.
The poll is now closed. That resolution stands approved. The 18th resolution concerns the non-renewal and non-replacement of Mr. Patrice Moreau as alternate statutory auditor. The poll is now open. This motion is carried. The 19th resolution concerns the appointment of Ernst & Young Audit as statutory auditor in charge of certifying sustainability for the remainder of his term of office in respect of the certification of the financial statements, that is, 4 financial years. The vote is now open. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the 20th resolution is to appoint KPMG SA as statutory auditor in charge of certifying sustainability information for a period of 6 years. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the 21st resolution is to authorize the Board of Directors to trade in the company's ordinary shares, up to a maximum of 10% of the share capital for a maximum unit purchase price per share of €40 and for a period of 18 months. The poll is now open. The poll is now closed. This resolution is approved. The following 3 resolutions are the responsibility of the extraordinary general meeting. The purpose of the 22nd resolution is to delegate authority to the Board of Directors to issue ordinary shares or securities giving access to ordinary shares of the company, reserved for members of a company savings plan with the cancellation of shareholders' preemptive subscription rights. The poll is now open. The poll is closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the 23rd resolution is to delegate to the Board of Directors the power to increase the share capital by issuing ordinary shares without preemptive subscription rights for shareholders in favour of a specified category of beneficiaries. The voting is now open.
Le scrutin est clos.
The voting is now closed. This motion is carried. The purpose of the 24th resolution is to authorise the Board of Directors to reduce the share capital by cancelling treasury shares held up to a maximum of 10% of the share capital per 24-month period for a period of 18 months. The poll is open now. The poll is now closed. This motion is carried. And lastly, the 25th and final resolution falls within the remit of the ordinary general meeting. The purpose of the 25th resolution is to confer the powers necessary to carry out the formalities associated with this meeting. The poll is now open.
Le scrutin est clos et la...
The poll is now closed and the motion is carried. Thank you indeed, ladies and gentlemen.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you. And we're now nearing the close of our meeting. I'd like to thank you for taking part. Thank you for your patience also. Thank you for your involvement. A couple of last words. Firstly, you will receive a gift as you leave. It is the Adopt perfume, which we're giving you as a gift. It's a company that we are actively supporting in AXA. And the next annual general meeting will take place in principle on the 24th of April 2025. You can put the date in your diaries already. So as there are no further business on our agenda, I declare the meeting to be adjourned and invite you to view a very short video which will bring this general meeting to a close. Thank you.
Arme alimentaire dans sa guerre contre l'Ukraine, une décision qui va aggraver encore la crise alimentaire mondiale.
L'année dernière, 20% des PME ont subi une cyberattaque. C'est une maison presque coupée du monde, isolée par la montée des eaux de la M, près de Calais.
Climat, géopolitique, cyberattaque, santé. Ces risques font aujourd'hui partie de notre quotidien. Nous ne vivons plus dans le même monde qu'avant. Mais aujourd'hui, qu'est-ce qu'un risque ? Comment les prévenir? Et surtout, qui vous protège? En nous intéressant à des cas concrets, nous allons vous montrer des solutions. Vivre avec son risque, un documentaire à visionner en 2024.